don't fight my friends and I don't fight people I know.
Nick looked me right in my face and lied to me and said he would do it.
I don't think George is hurt. I think he's scared.
You think I'm afraid of you, man? Are you crazy in your head, man?
I'm not in this to hurt people, you know. It's the funniest thing, but I like to think I'm not a violent person. How many times you had a gun to your head, George?
There was so much weed in his system when they tested him that he had to be high when he was fighting.
Nick Diaz, a legendary figure in the formative years of MMA. Today we're going to be talking about how he became a fighter, his career, and his complicated relationship with MMA. The Diaz brothers had a rough childhood.
I was broke. I was on welfare. I was getting dropped off from the corner. My mom dropped me off down the street because she's driving a shitty car.
It embarrassed me too,
yeah.
though.
We get kicked out of one house and then in one hotel, one motel, next one.
My mom's like working, 8-hour days at a restaurant for 30 years. So I wasn't.
But single mom?
Single mom.
Both brothers seemed destined to become fighters from a very early age. They got into fights all the time.
I think I got my first fight with a kid when I was in first grade.
Did you fuck people up in high school?
I was never picking on people or anything like that.
No,
it was more the other way around. I was a little insecure. I had a really hot girlfriend in high school, and I would get into fights over that. And then by the time I got into high school, I was moved around a lot of schools, so I was getting in fights in high school over that.
Nick dropped out of school. He didn't graduate 8th grade.
They put me on some half-day thing where they're like, okay, you're dangerous, you're on a half-day, and we want you to make perfect attendance before you can come back to a full day, and we're going to escort you from class to class. I'm like, I'm already embarrassed and insecure enough to be in school, so I basically had no shot at doing well in school, so I dropped out sophomore year and started competing.
I wasn't a troublemaker, but I didn't really sit still. I always felt like school was just not helping me.
And since he was fighting all the time already, he got really into his training, and he brought his brother Nate into it as well.
Then I started training jiu-jitsu when I was 16, and I was beating pro fighters. I was beating them on the mats, I was beating them in the gym, and I was...
Like right away?
Yeah.
To give a bit of context for their situation, apparently the older guys they trained with would often buy them burritos after class. Nate has said, quote, "I didn't have any money. At home, we didn't have shit. I was starving all day, so if I went to train, I get something to eat. Sometimes I'd be sitting at home, and it was like, well, if I go train with Nick, I'll get something to eat afterwards. If I don't, I'll just sit here and be hungry. I was going for burritos and dinner, and hey, I wanted dinner every day. Before I knew it, I was a blue belt." The way he describes it is kind of funny, the before I knew it, I was a blue belt, but at the same time, man, they were really in a tough situation. A pivotal moment in specifically Nick's upbringing is the tragic story with his girlfriend. Before Nick had even made his MMA debut, she tragically committed suicide. This was obviously devastating and made a profound impact on Nick. He said, quote, "There was no way I was going to go to school. I had no money, no car. I would have driven there and stopped her. After that, I was grown up. It was all over. I wasn't a kid anymore." He ran 7 miles every day to her grave to promise her that he would make it as a fighter. He's also dedicated a few of his fights to her.
I'd like to dedicate this performance to a few friends of mine that passed away. First off, a special girl, very special girl, named Stephanie Wise.
Now let's get into Nick's fighting career. He made his pro debut in 2001 and won by triangle. Now, it's important to note here before we really get into the story that Nick has always had a complicated relationship with MMA. He's said at multiple points throughout his career that he doesn't love fighting. It was just kind of the only thing that he saw a future for himself in. He's always fought a lot and he loved training, so it only made sense for him to pursue this career.
I gotta work hard and get paid, just like everybody goes to work, every day. It's hard times. Nobody likes people are like, "Oh, you love sparring, right?" It's a job. The money takes the fun out of it. It's fun. I love jiu-jitsu. I love boxing. I love practicing and training, and but fighting for money, against people, it's not my favorite.
You're not really sure if you still like doing this and fighting. Is that accurate?
I never liked doing this. Never liked doing this.
So why'd you do it in the first place?
Because I don't like not having a job, and this is all I could do, especially when I first started. And this is all I know how to do. It's all I'm good at, so that's what I do.
Obviously, this will become more clear as we get deeper into the story and how his career unfolded. Now, back to the fighting. In 2003, Nick Diaz becomes the first WEC welterweight champion.
Diaz, he's got but I'm not positive it was. I have to take another look at it. Joe Hurley just dominated this fight.
In the first round, the winner, Nick Diaz.
Later in 2003, Nick makes his UFC debut against Jeremy Jackson.
Oh, armbar. He's got it. He got it.
Also, Nick has had 38 pro fights, so we're not going to get into all of them. I just want to cover some of the most notable ones throughout his career. So for the next little while, Nick is fighting in the UFC. In 2006, he loses a decision to Joe Riggs, and then when they were getting checked out in the hospital after the fight, Nick started another fight with him. Classic. After his fight with Gleison Tibau in 2006, where Nick finished him in the second round, Nick Diaz parted ways with the UFC. Allegedly, Nick and the UFC had some disagreements about pay and contract exclusivity. He had 10 fights in this first UFC stint, going 6-4, including one where he finished Robbie Lawler. In 2007, Nick took his first fight out of the UFC in Pride. This fight was with Takanori Gomi. Now, this was an epic fight, and Nick Diaz finished Gomi by Gogo Plata.
He can't see it coming. Nice double. That's what Robbie wanted.
Oh, he's got right to give a block. And see how flexible Nick Diaz is? He's got Gomi in a whole world of trouble right here.
He's just so slick with it, like the way he's setting it up as he gets taken down. He's already controlling the posture so he can throw that leg over. It's so smooth, so seamless, beautiful submission, and to hit a Gogo Plata in MMA is just insane. But unfortunately, we have some bad news. Nick's drug test for this fight did not come back clean. He tested positive for weed. But listen to what Joe Rogan had to say about it.
He tested positive for the Gomi fight, and they said there was so much weed in his system when they tested him that he had to be high when he was fighting.
Being high and hitting that Gogo Plata, I mean, it kind of actually makes sense. Jiu-jitsu and weed are like this. I personally wouldn't know. Moving on, I think something really interesting about the Diaz brothers is how they do like marathons and triathlons. And Nick Diaz has actually swam to Alcatraz and back. I don't know how many times.
So you swam Alcatraz?
Yeah, so there's a triathlon. There's also a swim. It's Escape from the Rock triathlon and Escape from Alcatraz. 2 different events. In the last, 15 years I've been racing, I did that one 5 times.
Right.
So the swim is 1.5 miles, and it's really a lot nicer than you think.
Like, that is so impressive. And while we're on the topic, Nick did a triathlon 2 weeks before his Strikeforce debut against Frank Shamrock, where he finished him in the second round. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I did a triathlon, I just know I would be bedridden at the 2-week point, not fighting in a cage. Moving on, in 2010, Nick becomes the Strikeforce welterweight champion. He defends this belt 3 times. So Nick is off fighting in Strikeforce and Dream. Let's check back in with the UFC. In 2011, Dana White said, "The problem with Nick Diaz is Nick won't play the game even a little. You can't flip off the athletic commission. You have to play the game a little bit. When Nick Diaz wants to play just a little bit, and nobody's telling him not to be who he is and not to act the way he wants, but you've got to play a little. When he does, we'd love to have him back in the UFC." Also, in 2011, UFC buys Strikeforce. At this time, GSP is the UFC's welterweight champion, and Nick Diaz is the welterweight champion in Strikeforce. So Nick obviously wants this fight with GSP. This fight finally gets booked in October of 2011. However, an absolute nightmare unfolded for the UFC. Nick, unfortunately, no-showed some appearances and the press conference and got pulled from the fight.
We had a press conference in Toronto for GSP versus Nick Diaz for the welterweight championship. Nick Diaz was a no-show for his Monday Air Canada flight at 1:15 p.m. out of San Francisco. Then I talked to him at 4 o'clock, and he apologized and said, "Rebook me a flight tonight." So we did on Air Canada, leaving San Francisco at 9:50 p.m. I got a text from Diaz that said, "Yeah, I won't be making that flight." I called him and left him a message, which was Monday night. He still hasn't called me back yet. And we haven't heard from him. I haven't talked to him again. He hasn't returned my call. I've had my reservations about Nick Diaz for a long time now. And you've heard me use the term, play the game. All I ask this kid to do is play the game this much. There's certain things that you have to do. You have to promote this fight. You have to show up for press conferences. You can't start fights at fights. And the list goes on and on of things that I told Nick that we need from him. Nick looked me right in my face and lied to me and said he would do it. We've never had a situation where a guy just goes MIA and doesn't show up for any of this stuff.
Luckily, Carlos Condit, who was already on the card scheduled to face BJ Penn, agrees to step in to fight GSP. But less than 2 weeks before the fight, GSP gets injured and has to pull out of the fight with Condit. Now, the UFC needs to find a headliner, so they propose BJ Penn versus Nick Diaz to headline the card. The issue here is that BJ Penn and Nick Diaz used to train together, so Nick didn't want to take the fight initially, but BJ Penn accepted the fight first. So Nick agreed to fight him. Here's what Nick had to say about the situation.
Was the resistance because it was BJ and because you know him? Or
yeah, I don't fight my friends and I don't fight people I know. And that's just kind of a rule I have. You know, he signed the fight first. And that's all. I would never sign the fight first. I don't care how much money you put in front of me.
Does it bum you out that you have to fight a guy that you looked up to for so long in BJ Penn? Does that bother you?
Yeah, sure it does. You know, we weren't real close or anything like that, but we were pretty good. You know, but you know, just anybody I know really. That's not. I don't think that's I don't want to see that either.
Like a lot of people who support you say, if you come to fight, that's all that matters. The other stuff, the press conferences, all that, it's just, you know, it's just things around the fight. But as long as you keep coming to show up to fight, then you should not be reprimanded. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. This is fighting, and I come to fight. And I also didn't know it was a press conference. It's not like I wake up every morning and I hear the news or people. I didn't know I had a press conference. That was all a surprise. And then when I did find out it was a press conference, it was last minute. And I was like, great, what do I wear? You know, when I start training for a fight, nothing's easy about it. And all I care about is training and fight.
Nick ended up winning the fight by decision. And after the fight, it seemed like they had a nice moment together in the hospital. This is actually one of my favorite MMA photos, and I'm painting it right now. Also after the fight, Nick Diaz accused GSP of faking his injury.
Nick Diaz, the winner. George St. Pierre watching very closely.
I don't think George is hurt. I think he's scared. I think he's scared to fight everybody right now. What's up?
This really rubbed GSP the wrong way, so he asked Dana White to set up the fight again with Diaz. Now, the Nick Diaz and GSP fight is rebooked for 4 months later, but GSP suffered another knee injury and had to pull out of the fight.
You know, who knows? Maybe George isn't really hurt, you know. Have anybody seen any pictures of surgery? Because I haven't. I figure I let you chop my knee open. I ain't going to be fighting for next year. You know what I mean?
I found this clip of GSP right after his surgery to repair his ACL, which was the injury that he had to pull out of this fight for.
He said, that's the first thing he said. I'm gonna kick you. Motherfucker, and then want me to come back in a year and then fucking.
I really think this demonstrates the feelings that he had for Nick Diaz at the time. But luckily, Carlos Condit is again willing to step up and fill in for the fight. So the fight ends up being Nick Diaz versus Carlos Condit for the interim welterweight title.
GSP has been all over the media saying that he really wants to beat you and fight you, and he wants you to win on Saturday night. He's rooting for you.
I think a lot of that stuff isn't very genuine. You know, I don't know how much of it is and isn't really. A lot of people are putting a lot of pressure on him to say these sorts of things. It's not really him. I think he should just stick to what he does. I would, I guess.
Nick Diaz unfortunately loses by decision, and I've got some more bad news as well. Nick Diaz tested positive for weed again. This time, he got suspended for a year. When Nick had served the suspension 1 year later, he was again booked to fight GSP. At this point, there was definitely some bad blood between these two, and the lead up to the fight was interesting.
Him and his trainer has questioned my integrity in the sport. They said I was taking steroids and stuff like that publicly, and I never cheated in my life.
I didn't say nothing bad.
Things didn't go well for you. Okay, I understand. All right, but, you know, if you weren't selling wolf tickets this whole time.
I don't believe Nick Diaz is a bad human being. That's not what I said. Through my eyes, he's very disrespectful because I'm going to fight him.
That's what happened, bro.
Do you really think I'm afraid of you?
Man, that's fine. Okay, no, I don't.
You think I'm afraid of you, man? Are you crazy in your head, man? I'm not scared of you. You'll see Saturday if I'm scared of you.
All right. I'm intimidating, right? That's my plan, to intimidate you out.
Nick is not crazy. Nick is a very, very smart guy. People, they're like, oh, Nick is crazy. That's a persona that he has to intimidate people. It's like a guy at school, a bully, you know, that remember people that used to bully me before. They try to make me believe they're ready to kill people.
George likes to say I remind him of the bullies that picked on him growing up or they had to deal with. You know, I'm going to say, like, how many times you had a gun to your head, George? How many times someone put a gun to your head? How many of your best friends been shot through the chest with a .45?
In the fight, GSP beat Nick Diaz by decision. After the GSP fight, we don't see Nick in the cage for nearly 2 years. But in 2015, Nick Diaz made his return scheduled to fight SIlva. For timeline purposes, this was after Silva's year-long layoff to rehab his broken leg after the Chris Weidman fight. Now, this fight was originally ruled a decision win for Silva. But then, the drug test results came back. A sample of Silva's taken a few weeks before the fight revealed steroid use. Drostanolone, and androstane.
Once considered as the greatest MMA fighter of all time, the Spider's legacy has been tainted after testing positive for performance-enhancing drugs before and after his January 31st fight.
Silva was suspended for a year, retroactive to the fight date.
What do you have to say to your fans about the failed drug test?
So,
I don't know what happened. I'm surprised.
Now, Nick's sample tested positive for weed. Cue the Nevada State Athletic Commission suspending Nick for 5 years at 32 years old and fining him $165K.
Former WEC welterweight champion Nick Diaz has been suspended by the Nevada State Athletic Commission for 5 years after a failed drug test. The BJJ black belt was also forced to relinquish more than $150,000. An NSAC commissioner pointed to Diaz as a repeat offender and that the punishment fits the crime.
This sport, this commission, and everybody, they've done everything they can to keep me from being all the way on top, where I should be.
Pretty extreme, if you ask me, especially compared to SIlva's suspension. The MMA community was also in outrage about the suspension.
It's so not right for him to be suspended 5 years for marijuana. I'm against for them even testing for weed at all. It's not a performance-enhancing drug. It has nothing to do with athletic competition. It's only tested for political reasons. They say, oh, it's only for your safety to keep you from hurting yourself because you're out there. There's no reason for them to be testing for weed. It's so unfair. If one person tests for steroids, that could actually really hurt a person, and the other person smokes a plant that makes them happy, and he gets suspended for 5 years. Whereas the guy that could have hurt someone so much, he could have died in there, gets a slap on the wrist. It's not fair.
Not even talking about the weed part. It's about the Nevada Athletic Commission. What I think is overstepping their boundary. You know, just kind of being power hungry. You know, I heard that they told him that he doesn't respect them. You know, there's no rule or law that says you have to respect somebody. I mean, it does, especially when you're in a position of power. You know, you cannot use your emotions to steer your decision making. So yeah, I was very disappointed in that.
It's definitely not a performance enhancer. So, I mean, if a guy wins a fight and he's smoking weed, I mean, maybe he should like get 2 purses, you know?
Also, looking back at this today with how society's attitude towards weed has changed so drastically, this actually is just absurd. It's insane. And like, who decided that weed was performance enhancing? The punishment doesn't fit the crime. Also, keep in mind, Nick has been pretty honest and open about his anxiety and about how weed helps him function. So that's another element altogether. So Nick appealed the suspension and got it down to 18 months and got the fine down to $100K. However, due to his complicated and at this point borderline resentful relationship to MMA and probably remaining fines and administrative things to deal with, we didn't see Nick in the octagon for the next 5 years. When he did return to fight Robbie Lawler, it was pretty clear that his heart wasn't in it. It was clear that he didn't really want to be doing it, and rumors swirled that he was returning because he needed money, partially because of the Nevada Commission fines. Here's some clips from the media for that fight week, just so you can get a better idea of where Nick's head was at going into this fight.
Is there any part of it that you're able to enjoy? I mean, clearly it's
Nothing at all.
Do you feel like you're in a mindset space to walk into that octagon and do what you need to do?
No, but I never do. I never do. Yeah, I never enjoyed fighting. It's just something that I do.
Why do you have to do it right now? Why come back and do this now? Why are you here this week?
It's just what I do. You know, it's just what I do. I try to get away from it, but really, it's kind of inevitable.
Nick, unfortunately, got finished in the 3rd round. Reflecting on Nick's career really makes me sad. He gave us some really incredible moments and super entertaining fights, and he was able to pave the way for his brother to become a star, which was always super important to him.
My brother's the most important thing to me. Probably more important than anything. A lot of the time, it's why you know, I push forward and do so good, because I can't, you know, there'd been a lot less pressure on me if I didn't have a younger brother. And I'm happy I do. I do have a younger brother. I have a great younger brother and training partner.
Does that bring you back to a time in your life, like the bullying, the picking? Did that happen to you as a kid, and is that why you don't tolerate it? Okay.
Hell no.
That never happened to you?
No, I have a big brother, man.
Also, I can't help but think that if Nick had been fighting now, where in most places weed is legal and it's not a banned substance, the trajectory of his career might have been a little bit different. I know there's no use pondering the what ifs of this kind of situation, but I can't help but have that thought every time I think about this story. I'm a huge fan of the Diaz brothers, and I truly wish the best for them, for their health, and for the future. Train by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day. Let me know which fighter origin story you want to see next. Bye!